Hey there, Cowboys fan. Be honest, did you see this one coming? Because even the most plugged-in insiders didn't predict it. The Cowboys just signed wide receiver Holden, and it caught just about everyone off guard. And this wasn't just a filler move to round out the roster. When you look at the details, it's clear the front office sees real value in him. Holden agreed to a 3-year deal, including a $10,000 signing bonus and an additional $15,000 in guaranteed salary. Now, that might not sound like a blockbuster deal, but for an undrafted rookie, that's a pretty significant investment. It shows the Cowboys believe he's more than just camp depth. They're betting on his potential. So what's behind that confidence? Well, it starts with his physical profile. Holden stands 6'3" and weighs around 210 pounds. He began his college career at Alabama, but it was at Oregon State where he really found his stride. There, he developed into a dependable target, especially on short and intermediate routes, which, let's be honest, is something this offense has lacked outside of CeeDee Lamb. But here's where it gets interesting. This signing raises serious questions about how the Cowboys view their current wide receiver depth. Is Holden simply a camp body, or could his arrival be a sign that someone further down the depth chart is already on shaky ground? So tell me, do you think Holden has a real shot at making the 53-man roster? Vote in the poll and drop a comment, letting me know whether you see him as a long shot or a hidden gem the front office may have uncovered. Because the structure of this deal speaks volumes. And in the next chapter, we're diving into the wide receivers who should be on alert after this move. All right, let's get into the fallout from the Holden signing, because someone's seat just got a little hotter. The Cowboys didn't hand out guaranteed money to an undrafted rookie for nothing. That means the wide receiver room, which was already competitive, is now even more crowded. And some familiar names may be at risk. Let's start with Jalen Brooks. He's the name that immediately jumps out. Drafted in the 7th round in 2023, Brooks showed some flashes last preseason, but didn't contribute much during the regular season. And unlike Holden, Brooks isn't bringing any guaranteed money to the table right now. That matters. In a league where every dollar tells a story, the Cowboys just told us Holden might already be ahead in the pecking order. Then there's Tyron Billy Johnson and David Durden. Both are athletic, both have had moments, but neither has been able to lock down a consistent role. And let's not forget about Jalen Cropper, who had some buzz last preseason but didn't do quite enough to stick. The Cowboys are giving these young guys a shot, but there's a clear message here. If you're not producing, you're replaceable. It's also worth considering how Holden's size fits into this. Outside of CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks, most of the backup receivers are either smaller in stature or haven't shown the physicality needed to thrive over the middle. Holden brings something different. He's a bigger body who can box out defenders and win contested catches. That's something this offense has lacked at WR4 or WR5. And maybe, just maybe, the Cowboys are looking ahead. Could Holden be insurance in case someone like Michael Gallup doesn't bounce back this year? Or if Tolbert doesn't take that next step? So here's the question for you. Which wide receiver do you think is most vulnerable after this move? Is it Jalen Brooks? Maybe Durden? Or is there a bigger surprise brewing? Let me know in the comments. And make sure to vote in the poll. Because in the next chapter, we're shifting focus to another headline maker from minicamp, quarterback Joe Milton, and the shots being fired his way. Now let's talk about Joe Milton, the quarterback with the cannon arm and maybe a target on his back already. The Cowboys brought Milton in as an undrafted free agent, and he's quickly become one of the most talked about names at rookie minicamp. But not just because of what he's doing, more because of what's being said about him. During the early practice sessions, a couple of Cowboys insiders and local beat reporters didn't hold back. Words like inconsistent, wild, and all over the place were thrown around. And yes, it's just minicamp, but when the media starts painting you with that kind of brush this early, it usually means there's smoke. Now here's the thing, Milton has a rocket for an arm. That's never been in question. The guy can launch at 80 yards with ease, but the concern has always been about accuracy and decision-making. And so far, it looks like that's what's showing up on the practice field. One insider even hinted that Milton throws hard enough to hurt his own receivers, which, while kind of funny, also signals a lack of control. The Cowboys haven't said anything negative directly, but it's not hard to read between the lines. When you start hearing whispers about a young quarterback needing a lot of development, it's often a polite way of saying he's not close to being ready. And considering that the Cowboys didn't draft him and only brought him in as a UDFA, his leash isn't going to be long. What makes this more interesting is how the Cowboys have structured the backup QB situation. Cooper Rush is still there, and Trey Lance is on the roster too. If Milton can't outshine even one of those guys in camp, it's hard to see him sticking on the 53-man roster. Maybe the practice squad, but even that's no guarantee. Now let me throw this to you. Do you think the media is being too harsh on Joe Milton, or is this just reality setting in? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you've seen any clips of Milton throwing, let me know what you think of his potential. Next up, in Chapter 4, we'll zoom out and talk about how these moves, Holden and Milton, fit into a bigger Cowboys trend. There's a pattern developing here, and it says a lot about the front office's mindset. So, let's take a step back and look at the big picture. The Cowboys signing Treshaun Holden and bringing in Joe Milton aren't just random post-draft experiments. These moves are part of a broader pattern that's emerging this offseason, and it tells us something about the mindset inside that front office. Let's start with Holden. He's the kind of wide receiver the Cowboys usually like to take chances on. Big frame, SEC pedigree, a bit of edge to his game. Sure, he's had his share of red flags, but the Cowboys seem to be betting on controlled aggression over polish. They're clearly trying to inject some fresh energy into that WR room, especially behind CeeDee Lamb. With Brandon Cooks on the back end of his prime and Jalen Tolbert still unproven, it makes sense that they're looking for upside guys who might bring some bite. Then you have Milton, a project quarterback with traits through the roof but very raw mechanics. That fits another trend we've seen. The Cowboys are stockpiling high upside boom or bust talent and hoping they can hit on one or two guys without spending big. It's the classic low-risk, high-reward play, and it's exactly how you build depth when your cap space is tight and your core is expensive. But what's really interesting here is what this approach says about how the Cowboys view their roster and their coaching staff. Signing players like Holden and Milton means they're betting heavily on their development program. They're essentially saying, give us the clay and we'll mold it into something. That's a bold strategy, especially when you look at how thin certain spots on this roster are. So here's a question for you. Do you think the Cowboys' recent pickups show smart long-term thinking, or are they gambling too much on potential instead of proven production? Let me know in the comments. Are you buying into this build from within strategy, or do you want to see them go after more veterans? Coming up in Chapter 5, we'll tie it all together with what this means for the summer battles ahead, and why these under-the-radar moves could shake up the final roster.